fears, though, rising at home and abroad. This is how Homeland Security Secretary John Kelly described the feelings this way.
I was telling Steve on the way in here, if he knew what I know about terrorism, he'd never leave the house.
And if you knew what this guy saw firsthand with terrorism before 9/11, you too might think about ever leaving. USS Cole Commander Kirk Lippold. Commander, very good to have you. I mean, that is scary stuff. People who've been privy to this sort of stuff, let alone you, who witnessed, more than a dozen of your men dying to a terror attack. People aren't aware of that until they see it up close. They aren't aware of the fact that this is a perennial concern with any country, anywhere. And yet we sometimes get comfortable in this country thinking these days it's been so far since 9/11 that we needn't worry. What do you think?
Well, I think, Secretary Kelly was right in that there is a lot of intelligence out there, and especially at his level where he's exposed to a lot of raw and analyzed intelligence, there's a flip side to that I think the American people should know, and that is there are many dedicated men and women in the military, in the CIA, NSA, the Department of Homeland Security with Secretary Kelly that are working diligently and very hard to keep this nation safe. While the threat is there, the key to us is to ensure that they can go out forward deployed into foreign countries, working with partners to share intelligence to keep not only our nation safe, but other nations as well.
Commander, I always wonder, though, how you advise people to go about this. I've been reading in a lot of the British press advice for parents if you're dropping your kid off or they want to go to a concert or when they go to a public venue, a theater, what have you. So we change our schedules a bit. Now, it's been years since the attack on the USS Cole, years since 9/11, of course. But I always think that with distance grows sort of like a malaise, or, you sort of just forget. Well, how do you balance that out, especially now with Britain under this heightened alert of a second bomb, this critical threat level, their highest, indicating something could be imminent? So it's pronounced there, less so here.
I think that I think the American people are pretty smart. We've already heard the saying numerous times, see something, say something. But now you need to expand that. If you're going to go out to a large venue where there are large people, that's obviously a more ripe target for a terrorist. So what you do is just keep your whereabouts. Make sure there's nothing suspicious. Keep an eye on the people around you. You don't need to be scared. You just need to be observant and make sure that if you do see something that's odd, ask about it, question someone, nudge the person next to you and say, hey, did you just see that? Or what do you think about that? What do you think about that individual? So I think it's just being proactive. It's something that unfortunately the Israelis have learned about for years. Europe unfortunately is learning about that now. Let's just hope it doesn't come home here to the scope and degree that Europe has had to live with it because of the influx of immigrants.
Now, you were over Yemen at the time here, but I'm wondering now, given Libya as a new focus with this Abedi, the mastermind of the attack in Manchester, his brother and father arrested, other potential accomplices questioned in Britain, but the common link for all seems to be a connection to Libya, visiting there, communicating with folks there. What do you make of that?
Well, I think it is part of how we track and try and determine what terrorist networks are involved. It is the larger picture of sharing intelligence between both the United States and partner nations so that we can build that larger picture. Who are the government sponsors of terrorism? What groups are they specifically belonging to? ISIS, Al-Qaeda, Al-Shabaab, and others. And then figuring out, okay, who are the key people that are recruiting, financing, and organizing these groups? Because when you understand how these terrorist organizations are actually working, how they're doing their job, then you're going to be able to start figuring out how do we target them for defeat. First with individuals, then within the financial networks, and then you start figuring out how do we dismantle
Commander, we
them.
already know a lot about this. If you think about it, there are 400 to 500 active investigations into people plotting to do what Abedi did. In fact, he was on that list. We also know that if you include anyone even connected with that sort of activity or curious activity, the number approaches 3,000. What do you do with those people? I mean, in this country, you can question them, but you can't detain them unless you have something to grab them on. What do you do?
I think it's a great question, and Neil, that is one of the great conundrums that any democracy is going to face. While individuals have certain rights and freedoms under their various forms of government and under our Constitution, sometimes just getting a knock on the door and the FBI pays you a visit and say, you know, we've noticed some odd things going on. We've noticed your communication patterns. We've noticed some statements that you've made. These are the kind of things that make those people aware, because what you want them to do is, first and foremost, give them pause, give them an opportunity to rethink who they're associating with and what they might be planning to do. But more importantly, it's to try and make them also move so that we can figure out, who are they talking to? Who are they informing? What are they planning on doing? Because it's getting inside that network, getting inside that person's head so that we can, in fact, get the tip or information that allows local law enforcement to thwart that attack, or if it's going to happen, mitigate its effects as much as possible.
All right, Commander, thank you very, very much. Be safe this weekend. Thank you.